Hi guys, it's me Sword Swift again. So right now we're at the Petersen Museum for an Avant magazine event for the 10th anniversary of Urban Outlaw by Magnus Walker, and we're gonna take a tour of Magnus Walker's personal car collection. After that, we're gonna go on a drive with Magnus Walker and a bunch of other cars. It should be fun. So this is really cool. We're basically the only ones up in the entire museum. If you haven't been to the Petersen Museum, it's really cool. Some amazing cars. Now, let's head to the vault. This is so cool. Let's go check out Magnus's collection.
All right, we're rocking and rolling? Yeah. Let's do it. All right. We're going to go down through this door here, so watch your step. Located in my downtown LA garage to the Petersen Museum. It's a 10-year retrospective of the short documentary film called Urban Outlaw that came out October 15, 2012. And initially there were 10 cars on display here, and then I realized there was room for one more car on display. So 10 cars, 10 years in what I call disruption. So I'm going to walk you through the 10 cars, and then I'll also walk you through some of the collaborations that were made possible by Tamir Moscovici's short documentary film that went on to win a few awards for him and sort of put me on the map. Along is my 1971 911T, the car that's referred to as 277. But there's some of the parts of 277, it's sort of antiquated, it's running old Weltmeister sway bars, there's nothing fancy about it, but it's the car I'm most comfortable in, and it's also the car I'm perhaps most associated with. The car that we've got here is essentially the car that I fell in love with, Porsche. That story I've told a million times. When I was 10 years old, went to the London Court Motor Show in 1977 and fell in love with a white Martini Turbo. This is not that car, but this is the birth of all Porsche 930 Turbo. When I think of Porsche, that's the silhouette I think of. Porsche made 284 cars in 1975. And this is one of them. It's pretty rare because the 75 never officially was brought into the country. The US didn't get the turbo till 76. So perhaps my favorite car, perhaps the car that started my love affair with Porsche. So if you want to follow me and step on it, feel free. And then I got some posters that I put on the roof, which you can see right there. And then I got a bunch of tape, and then I got out some pencils and Sharpies, and I did these little mock-up illustrations. I did a few of them. but that was how it started. These were post-its on the roof. And this was how I sort of did all my illustrations and looked about and materials. And it was everything there. And it was probably the only 914 that had been at sea up to that point. But it just goes to show the idea for me is something that can't be taught. The execution of the idea can be taught. But the actual... And then my buddy, Robert Angelo, approached me and said, hey, I'm thinking of selling my 993. I go, all right, kind of interested. He goes, let me drop it off and you can keep it for a week, see what you think. So he drove it down, the bumper was hanging off, wasn't really running good, and then I realized he hadn't told me it was wrapped. I thought this was paint. So it came down, it was wrapped, this is the original color of the car, and I wasn't really in love with it, but the more I drove it, the more I clicked with it. So I ended up striking up a deal at a really low price. I took the car, the first thing I did was painted the hood. And it looked kind of cool with this Mexico Riviera blue-black hood and wing. And it was sort of a little bit of an RS, but it didn't have any of my personality. So I did kind of like what I did with the 914. I got out some tape, some paper tape, and started adding colors, like this United Colors of Benetton vibe, 80s, 90s was in my head. And this sort of camouflage battleship, but in bright colors was in my head. My most performance-oriented build today is this car right here. These two cars are sort of bookends of what I call the louvered fender cars. This 1990 964 is a car that I completed in 2015. And it's probably my most performance-oriented build to date. And it's probably the only car I've done that's one color. It's what we call Outlaw slate gray. So it doesn't look as flashy and color blocks and boy racery as all the other cars, but it has more modifications than all the other cars. The louvered fenders, we're going to talk about those in detail because I teamed up with Rod Emery, and I'll talk about that original one on the wall over there. But the first set was actually done on the 67S back in 2014. This was done 2015. So everything from the car has been modified, and my goal here was not to backdate or go wide body, which often happens with the 964, but to keep all the 964 DNA intact. Big bumpers, rockers, tail, but change everything about it. So there's inspiration from 356, Roof Yellowbird, Sport Classic. So I started by cleaning up the bumper, channeled the hood, which normally would be about 22 inches wide. The master craftsman Rod Emery and I did the louvered fenders. My buddy TJ Russell at Bar 911 did the through the fender filler, which just basically welded up the filler cap. And the goal here was not to try and do a through the hood, center or side, but do something that hadn't been done before. And that was through the fender. A little bit like the individual steel stamp Emery done fender dies. This is not a carbon piece that's put in. These are individually stamped. But the real challenge on the car was perhaps the channeled roof. This was a sunroof car, so it was sunroof delete. Most people just go like RS America, sunroof delete. My goal was to create this sort of sport classic inspired, somewhat channeled roof line. Then we deleted the rain guard, then we rolled the fender lids, did the R integrated turn signals. And then perhaps the biggest challenge was finding a tail that looked right but hadn't been done on a 964. Like a dovetail to me looks awesome on a 964, but being done before. RS America tail I feel is too wide for a narrow body car. So what I ended up doing was taking an early 3-liter turbo tail, getting rid of the rubber, adding a little lip to it, and then channeling it. 16 by 8 or 9 to get 225, 245, 45, 16 time. But at the time, this was a very low budget build. Water came in, and this was what came from that. Perhaps one of my favorites, 04 Gen 2 996 GT3, too fast, too much to race off the street. This has got, for me, just the right amount of power, weight, and weight. Back to Robert Beckford ordered this car but never took delivery of in 1976. For whatever reason, I don't know. But I just love it because this, to me, was what I fell in love with Porsche. A white line 277 seems to be that relatable car. And I think my relatability in the automotive world is not necessarily I'm a Porsche guy. I think people relate to the story because I think we all share the passion of the thrill, of the chase, the acquisition, the build, the drive, and the people. It's always the people that connect the passion together. And 277 seems to be the catalyst that has connected people outside of the Porsche world to that car.
Petersen, thank you so much for joining us. If you were on the tour, thank you so much to Jacob and the Avant team for working with us on putting this together with Magnus. The route is about 2 hours. We're going to be in canyons most of the way. Magnus is going to be leading the rally, so he'll be out on front. That doesn't mean that you need to match his speed. He will be driving spiritedly as well, but just be safe. This should be really fun. The location that we're going to is a car storage facility. There'll be lunch there when you arrive. We'll go on a tour of the facility. There's about another 200 cars at that facility that you'll be able to tour. And we do have photographers, so Hunter and Soren, if you could raise your hand. So if you see them, Hunter, what car are you driving?
So I'm in a white 991 Porsche with a big wing.
So if you see a white 991 with somebody hanging out of the side, make sure to slow down so they can get a nice rolling shot. Soren is the photographer, so he's going to be the one hanging out the side. Just, again, we want to get as many fun shots as possible. These will go up on our website after, so you'll have access to them.
Okay, everyone, well, that was amazing. I saw some crazy cars that I never even thought I'd ever get a chance to see. I met Magnus, and now we're gonna get to go on the drive.
Yeah.
This is obviously the good-looking crew that we met at the Petersen. Before I ramble on, because I rambled on earlier on, I do want to take this opportunity, and I think we should have a moment of silence for Ken Block, who passed away tragically earlier this week. For many, Ken is, was, and will always be a big, big motivation. So let's have a moment of silence for Ken Block. Okay, so life goes on. We're all going to be motivated. I appreciate you guys coming out to the Petersen. I want to thank the Petersen and this guy right here for inviting me out to say a few words. I'm sure you guys all had a pretty spirited, fun drive on the way up. And ultimately, that's the message I like to preach: is get out and drive, have fun, smiles per mile, and memorable moments. Like I said earlier on, for those that did the Vault tour, I talk about community as much as I talk about getting out and driving, and having destinations to drive to with like-minded people. Of course, the first thing when you get out of the car, you're all sort of somewhat high-fiving each other mentally and talking about how the drive was, what you liked, what you didn't like, and that's one of the things I love about, you know, basically doing this type of drive, this type of event, is the camaraderie of people sharing fellow like-minded stories and those things that I do like to talk about, smiles per mile, and memorable moments. So I don't really have anything else to say other than I'm glad to be part of this. I appreciate all the continuous support from everyone that is here towards what I'm doing. I'm just doing things I love. I think that is the common bond that brings us all together. So that's all I really got to say at this moment. I appreciate all of you, and let's enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Right now we're at the Collector Car Vault, and there are some amazing cars here, over 200 cars, and we're gonna check them out. inviting me to this incredible event. It was really cool to finally meet Magnus Walker, and I made some cool new friends too. Thanks for watching, guys. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram.